I analyzed every frame of the trailer for the casting of Frank Stone, the new single-player game developed by Supermassive Games and set in the same canon as Dead by Daylight. Before the trailer was released, what we knew was that the game was going to have an all-new cast of characters that were not in Dead by Daylight, and that it would take place outside of the entity's realm. The trailer and other press releases that have come out since the Game Awards have given us a lot more detail, so here's what I found. Interspersed throughout the trailer are several flashes of a film reel with some blink and you'll miss it words. I looked through those frame by frame, and if you rotate them 90 degrees and flip them and put them together, they spell the words title, date, and Kodak. There's also one that says PR and one that has a string of numbers that doesn't make any sense, so I imagine this is just the very beginning or the very end of a Kodak film reel along with its serial number. So unfortunately, no secret messages that I can decode from this. But then it cuts to Behavior Interactive's logo with a film grain over it, and it cuts again to the titular character Frank Stone. He sits at a workbench wiping off a jagged looking metal mask and turning over some kind of tool sharpening file. In the background you can hear echoes of screams of pain and distress. It's probably past victims. A voice says, "Whatever's down there, it's too dangerous." And whether this is Frank's voice or the voice of somebody else is unknown at this time, because that is the only clear line of dialogue that you hear in the entire trailer. Over the workbench are all sorts of tools that can be used for yard work, but they can also be used for murder. The scene then cuts to a flashlight searching through the forest, and the lyrics to David Kushner's Daylight start playing. Daylight's a song that's about the conflict between the pleasures and guilt that come from sinning, as well as how much of a struggle it can be to resist temptation. This could very well be the situation that Frank is in. Maybe the entity is trying to get him to kill for it, and maybe he likes it, but he knows that it's wrong. But anyway, the person with the flashlight finds a hand belonging to somebody who has probably been dead for a hot minute based on how the hand looks. The next cut is to a film reel being played and shown over a projector while a boy and a girl watch the film. Whoever is holding the camera is walking up to a steel mill and then into a tunnel. The casting of Frank Stone takes place in Cedar Hills, Oregon, which is a town to the west of Portland. The game's description says that Frank's shadow looms over the town and that it was forever altered by his violent past. It also says that deep within the Cedar Steel Mill were where the crimes of a sadistic killer took place, and that there's a mystery involved. The wording of all this seems ambiguous enough to suggest that Frank might not have been the one who committed all these murders, but may have been the one to take the blame for them. However, going off of everything, let's just operate under the assumption that it was him. The trailer then cuts from film footage to four friends investigating the locations depicted in that film. We see the inside of the tunnel as well as the workbench from earlier, but a significant amount of time seems to have passed because it's now overgrown. In the official website for the casting of Frank Stone, there's this interactive game where you can investigate this workbench, and there's a news clipping of two people who were murdered, and the date says Monday, September 17th, 1962, I believe. A higher resolution image of the article has the date cut off and a lot of the text, but it mentions that there were two people who were found dead in a car off the side of the road, and it was deemed to be a murder. A press release teaser by Behavior also includes a security pass for the Cedar Steel Mill, which was dated April 27th, 1960. So I think it's safe to say that Frank Stone was mostly active in the early 1960s. There's also a design of Frank Stone's armor that says "A creature forged to purge the world," and a notebook containing sketches of various weapons. You can see that he considered using a chained weapon for some range, but decided he'd rather be close enough to feel the blows. He also planned on using scissors and then opted to modify the scissors by breaking the handle and binding the two halves together to make it like a two-bladed knife. And the three weapons that he seems to have opted for are a hammer, the modified scissors, and a sharpened file for use on the neck. So Frank Stone appears to be very methodical and deliberate in his killings. But as I was saying, the newspaper clipping, the security pass, and the aged workbench during the time period of the protagonists, it leads me to believe that Frank did his thing in the 1960s, filmed it, and that the game takes place maybe 10 or 20 years later when the protagonists discover these films. Before we move on, I would like to give a shout out to my channel members. Their names are Marsh, Sinner, Brotac, and Fake Milk. I have pleaded with these people to stop giving me their money on a monthly basis, but they have all refused because they like the coziness of our private group chat that is one of the perks for it. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys, and let's get back to the video. We never get a really clear view of the casting of Frank Stone, which is a bummer. Supermassive has a tendency to cast film and television actors in their games, and I wonder if they've done the same here. For a moment, we see stormy red clouds and flashes of lightning, which is our first hint at anything supernatural going on here, being a a Dead by Daylight game, we can expect a fair amount of cosmic stuff. The group finds an X painted on the wall, and we catch a glimpse of a hook, just like in Dead by Daylight. Also, in the stills that you can see on the Steam listing for the game, there is a generator just like the ones from DBD, so I'll touch on that later. At the end of the tunnel, we see Frank in his apron and helmet, accompanied by the screams that seem to haunt him. As the song lyrics say, "I know I can't resist it," we get a close-up shot of a journal with a drawing of the Entity, who is the elder god from Dead by Daylight that influences killers to do evil and abducts them as well as the survivors. The visuals paired with the song lyrics make it seem like Frank Stone does not want to kill, but the allure of the Entity is just too much for him to withstand. A lot of killers in Dead by Daylight have backstories involving them being tempted, coerced, or worn down by the Entity until they snap. The hillbilly and the nurse are two such examples. We get one more look at the red sky with a large spidery appendage coming out of the dark hole, and then it cuts to the final scene. The final scene is Frank Stone in his mask, looking dead behind the eyes. It cuts back to the projector, and if you go through it frame by frame, you can see that the projector is the exact same shot of Frank that we were looking at moments ago. We get one more look at Frank Stone, this time with the Entity right behind him as the title, "The Casting of Frank Stone," appears on the screen. And then a title card for the game announces that it is coming in 2024. Based on all of this information, I have two theories. The first one is that Frank Stone might have been set up to take the fall. As I mentioned earlier, they keep the wording ambiguous enough to the point where he may have been the one doing the killing, or he could have possibly been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and then the community looked past the plausible deniability and decided to metaphorically cast stones at Frank. Casting stones has biblical ties, much like the song lyrics of the trailer, and that could end up being the twist that Frank Stone is not the true villain of the game. To me, my second theory makes more sense, and I'm more inclined to believe this one, and that is that Frank Stone is in fact the villain of the casting of Frank Stone, but he's no longer around. I believe that Frank knew of the Entity and saw what happens in the Entity's trials and decided to film himself acting out what he saw as a form of supplication to be taken into the Entity's realm. Call it an audition tape. Maybe he always wanted to be in the film industry, but he couldn't, and that did some damage to his psyche or something. But anyway, as the trailer shows a hook and the pictures released by Supermassive in Behavior show a generator, I think Frank staged his own trial where he gave victims a chance to escape from the steel mill by repairing a generator while he hunted them down and filmed it. He hoped that this audition tape would get him cast as a new character in the Entity's realm. The protagonist will spend the game trying to find the serial killer that affected Cedar Hills so deeply, only to find a final film reel that shows what we see at the end of the trailer. Frank Stone's film audition was accepted and he was taken by the Entity. I'm probably wrong, but it's fun to speculate. The casting of Frank Stone is due out in 2024 at some point, and you are able to wishlist it now. So tell me, are you excited to see what the world of Dead by Daylight has in store with this game? Let me know. But anyway, if you've made it this far, I hope you have a great day, and I appreciate you all.